made it, huh? It's good to see you.
Is the meeting open right now? Not yet? Not too badly. How about you guys? I didn't realize that one, that board appeal that he sent us was 92 pages. I was just sitting here going through.
Oh,
I was like, whoa.
Mr. Davis?
Yeah, Mr. Davis.
Yeah.
I started reading it, I was like, okay. Got into like the 5 pages. I was like, how long is this? Like 92 pages.
I don't understand why it's had to be so much involved. He wasn't even in the room. Miss Eloy.
Kate, can you pass this to Sarah? I forgot my receipt because I was
I'm
ready.
gonna give it right back to you today anyway,
Okay.
because I had your folders.
Oh, okay.
Reply to the email. I won't be going to Edison this year, so.
Oh, you will not, okay. Okay.
Wait, get that back.
I don't have to put my fingerprints
She was
on
about to
it.
get it back.
Now, I've got your folders upstairs for, the Unity Conference, so I will be bringing those down.
Okay, perfect. And then I'll just come back sometime, maybe tomorrow if I could. Yeah, 'cause it's for the receipt for the hotel.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Okay, and I did a transaction, which I have that one. I forgot. Okay, let me do this.
We're not taking action on Eloy today. Are we?
The time is 3:30. I'm now calling to order the Paris Union High School District Board meeting. 3:30. Oh, yeah, you should have been able to join. Are you good?
No, I asked you before, you said,
Oh, I apologize. I apologize. Item 3.1, invitation to address the Board of Trustees, closed session items only. For closed session item? Thank you. So before we invite Mr. Gonzalez up to the podium, I have a statement to read. Individual speakers shall be allowed 3 minutes to address the board on each agenda or non-agenda item. The board shall limit the total time for public input on each item to 20 minutes with the board consent. The president may increase or decrease the time allowed for public presentation depending on the topic and the number of persons wishing to be heard. The president may take a poll of speakers for or against a particular issue and may ask that the additional persons speak only if they have something new to add. At this time, Mr. Gonzalez, would you like to step forward, please? And make sure your microphone's on and go for it.
Yes. Hello. Hi. How you guys doing? So I'm here today because I've been on paid administrative leave since April of last year for a domestic violence case, and so I'm here because I want to save my job. I'm not trying to leave. I mean, but that's what the order is. They want to dismiss me. So as you can see, I mean, I work for another school district also as a sub, and I like working here. I mean, I love working here. I've been here for, I don't know, maybe I think 10 years or 8 years. So this happened. So this happened one day. We were, having a celebration, and kids got involved over an adult discussion, and we had strangers at our house. Kids, their friends, and they called. One of them called the police officer, and that's what happened. It wasn't like a violent, like that's what they charged me for, but it wasn't like no violent crime or, you know what I mean. I went to court. I went for about a year. Just being stressed out. Just going and going and going. So finally, I gave up. I just want this to end. So what I did is I took a deal, and they gave me a deal, which is they usually give this deal to state employees, district employees, and so this is what the DA offered me. They usually don't offer this, but she offered it to me. She goes, you know what? You don't have no past history. You don't have anything on your record. This is the only thing you have. And he goes, I can't just let you off the hook like that easy. So, but this is what she offered me. She offered me 53 weeks of domestic violence classes, complete those classes, and they'll drop my felony to a misdemeanor. So, but I got to complete these classes with, like I said, 53 weeks. And I registered for those classes already. I should be starting them like in a week, I think, a week or two. And that's what I'm here for. I'm here just to tell you guys the truth. I'm not hiding anything. I can bring you guys proof of what they offer. I don't have it on me, but I got to go back in December. I can bring you guys more proof if you guys really like, if you guys listen to my story and what happened. But like what I said, sorry, a little time out, I'm sorry. So that's what happened. This was an adult thing, but kids got involved. Over it was over nothing. It was just, I have stepkids, and they usually don't like the way you talk to their mom, but like I said, it's an adult conversation, right? These are teenagers, so they get involved, and you tell them to step out of the house or don't butt into our conversations. Well, these kids nowadays, they don't listen. So what happens? One of her friends calls the police, saying, my mom's husband's yelling at her and my mom, and like I said, police come over, they come to the house. Someone's going to jail, someone's going to get arrested, and it happened to be me. And this happened at my home. I wasn't out in the street. I wasn't out, we were at our home, we were having a party. It was a celebration, and that's how it happened. Okay, so if you guys look up my report, or if you want me to bring you the report, I can show you that all this happened in my residence. I wasn't out there trying to be violent. I wasn't trying to hurt nobody. It was a discussion. And that's my story.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. I just want to address real quick. So you're talking to us before the board right now. I just want to make sure you utilize your union and all your rights.
Yes.
And due process was gone through. So did you file to have an appeal through us?
I've been trying to get a hold of my union for
because I want to make sure you get due process no matter what,
Mhm.
And if this is the right decision or not. But we're going to deal with everything as addressed on the agenda. But if you're going through the process, I would like to know so we could all work accordingly together.
When you say the process as
Right. So did you file for an appeal to speak to the board? So that way we could hear your case?
No, I did not.
Okay, so I don't know what process you're in or with your union or your representatives, and that's for the district to advise. So more than likely, we're going to discuss it in the closed session, but we appreciate your input, and we can't really elaborate on it
Yeah.
right now.
No, well, like I said, they told me to show up today. They go, one of our reps, I talked to him today,
Okay.
and he goes, show up at the board meeting. I thought they would be here, but they're not here.
It starts at 5.
Oh,
That's
okay.
That's okay.
But yeah, he told me 3:30, so that's why I'm
No
here.
problem. Oh, because of closed session. Okay. Well, thank you very much, and we'll definitely take everything you said into consideration, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Larry, is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
There's so many people, I can't keep up. Mr. Stafford? Oh, wait, apologies. My fault. Yes. And now, Mr. Stafford. Any discussion? No? please vote. Item 4.1 is a 3-0 vote, while 2 are absent right now. And we'll be going to closed session right now at 3:36 PM. Oh, yeah, do you guys? Okay. So you know we're gonna be back at 5.
just shared it with you. Oh, good deal. Okay. So, you know how to advance it? That's what you're going to use. Right? Yeah, you're going to do it as you go. You'll move it instead of you need to. There's just hitting the middle button, correct? Okay. So it's just that one and that one. You're going to hit that one right. Okay? Then you begin. Look at her. She's looking.
time is 5:41, or we are now reconvening in public session. Item six, oh, it just skipped. Let me go back. At this time, can you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yesterday, September 17th, was Constitution Day. To remember when that very important document was put into action for this country, and it gave us the people, explained the rights that we have that override those of the government itself. And I would like everybody to just bow their heads and thank God, or whoever you wish to thank, that we had such foresight from our forefathers and mothers.
We now go back to the regular board meeting of Paris Union High School District at 6:04. So we're okay. All right, item 8.1 is revision, adoption, ordering of agenda for September 18, 2019. Is there a motion?
Second.
Mr. Stafford and Dr. Rao. Any discussion? Please vote. Item 8.1 is a 5-0 vote. Item 9.1, report out of closed session.
We do have one report out of closed session. In closed session by a vote of 4-0, the Board of Trustees approved the release of classified employee number 212295, effective September 18th, 2019.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Item 9.2, district update by the superintendent.
Thank you again, Mr. Garcia. We had a grand opening for the Paloma Valley J Cube building and the snack bar, ticket booth, restroom building out by the football field on a couple weeks ago on Friday. It was a nice event. We had quite a few people there from the community. Good to see some of our staff there, and they're already using that area where we had the ceremony for lunch and having different things out there, so it's great to see that being so well used. I was lucky enough to first lead the way because Miss Raines was away on vacation, so I had to be the MC that night too. So I did that, and then got the chance to barbecue about 100 hamburgers in an hour for the staff, and the people were there. So it was fun though. It was a good time. It was a very nice event. Dr. Freeman mentioned the Student of the Month. We kicked that off last Wednesday with our first Student of the Month of the year. Really nice event over at Sizzler. It's always such a great time to hear the stories of our kids, where they come from, what they've been through, and what their plans are moving forward. So it was a really nice event. I would welcome any of the board members that if you're off that day or can take off that day to come in the morning and join us. It's fun. We've had back to school nights at Paris Lake, Pinacati, CMI, Paloma Valley, and Heritage. Our last one will be next week over at Paris High School. So they've all been doing a great job. Heritage we had to cut short though because the fire caused a lot of smoke and ash started falling when we had that, so we had to send everybody home. But they still had quite a few people show up even though with that going on. Speaking of the fire, we had to close school on September 6th. I'm sure the kids were all heartbroken. I'm sure the staff was all heartbroken, but we want the safety of our kids and our families is the most important thing for us. So it was the prudent thing to do was to close school that day and not have them have to be affected by the smoke and the ash falling. Last Thursday, Friday, we had a large group of teachers, administrators, and board members attend the Excellence Through Equity Conference. Dr. Rao was there, Dr. Freeman, and Mr. Garcia. It's very informative every year to hear what's going on in terms of equity and what are the things that we need to work on to get better in our district to be more equitable for all kids and all families. Paris Day at the SoCal Fair is on Saturday, October 5th, and the following week will be Menifee Day. So if you live in the if you have Paris boundaries on your ID, you can get into the fair for free, and the week that Menifee Day is, the day that they have Menifee Day, if you live in Menifee and have that on your ID, you can get in free there also. We have a couple big days coming up. We have our October PD Day for district-wide, October 10th and 11th over at Heritage High School. Every employee in the district will be going through, I think it's 12 possible sessions. And some of them will be required, some of them they'll be able to choose what they want to go through. We have our kickoff to college event will be on October 16th. All of our students will be going through different activities for that. Next Saturday, September 28th, it's Ed Camp Paris. It'll be at Heritage High School. No, Paris High School, I'm sorry. Getting to show off the new buildings over at Paris High School to teachers and staff from other schools that are coming and participate in that. Where we'd love to have a huge group, any of you out there that want to come, even the kids, if you're interested in coming and learning about some technology, or you could teach us old dogs some stuff about technology, we'd appreciate that, but everyone's welcome. And that concludes my report for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Item 9.3, student representatives to the Board of Trustees. Trustee Nelson.
Yes, from Heritage High School, student representatives Perla Nceja and Madeline Segal. Did I say that right? Okay.
Good evening, President Garcia, members of the board, Mr. Bennett, and members of the cabinet. My name is Madeline Siegel.
I'm Perla Ceja. We have had a great start of the school year at Heritage. Here are some of the things going on at Heritage High School. We started out the year with our Camp Legacy program. On the first day of school, all students were welcomed to the new year by our band and cheer team in the morning, and we had a full day of Camp Legacy activities. Camp Legacy is a series of activities specific to each grade level. We had a guest speaker from the ANU project as well, who happens to be a Heritage graduate. On Friday, ASB hosted a lunchtime rally with games in the quad, and we capped off the week with our football program traditional legacy ceremony.
Our Lean Crew leaders and coordinators have been working hard this school year. In addition to the freshman orientation that took place before school started, they also hosted a freshman movie night and the freshman tailgate. All three events were a big success. The Lean Crew leaders are enrolled in the College and Career Foundations and Avid 9 classes with the 9th graders that are peer tutors and are making positive connections every day.
HHS clubs. And in August, ASB hosted the annual Club Rush. We have 50 clubs on campus at this time, but new clubs are always been submitted. Our clubs are already holding club meetings and are working hard on events and activities. We are proud of the club culture we have at Heritage and are excited to watch the list of clubs grow as we provide opportunities for our students to get involved in our campus.
Speaking of one of our clubs and programs on campus, the FFA program hosted their annual Green Hand Conference. This program introduces students to the benefits and opportunities in agricultural education, including SAE and FFA. The conference is a large undertaking and is organized by our FFA students and teachers. Schools from around Southern California come to one of the 2 days of the conference.
The upcoming events we have at Heritage are Senior Parent Night, the National Honor Society induction ceremony, the blood drive, FFA plant sale, homecoming week, and band field tournament.
Heritage is about to embark on a journey around the world for this year's homecoming, Far From Home. Spirit Week will be September 30th through October 4th. We will dress up as we travel the globe. The homecoming rally and the game will be on Friday, October 4th. We will be taking on Elsinore High School. On Saturday, October 5th, we will be having a great time at the homecoming dance.
The monthly celebrations. Our student of the month is Luke Grenier. Luke is a drum major for the Mighty Patriot Regiment. He attended drum major camp over the summer and helped Mr. Mullen with the band camp for incoming freshmen over the summer. Adam Weinberger is our classified staff of the month. Adam is one of our awesome campus supervisor. He is a great support to all students and staff. Always has a great smile on his face. He works hard on building connections with all students on campus. We appreciate everything Adam does for our HSS family. Gabriela Mejia is the teacher of the month. She is part of the math department. She is always positive and willing to go the extra mile for her students. She is also part of the Heritage High School Guiding Coalition and provides staff development for teachers during our Friday PD days.
That concludes our presentation. Thank you so much for the continued support of We Do at Heritage.
Mr. Freeman?
I would like to introduce the student representatives from Paloma Valley High School. We have Kaylee Millar, Ethan Smith, and Josiah Seville.
Good evening, Superintendent Bennett and the rest of the cabinet and board. My name is Ethan Smith. I'm the ASB president at Paloma Valley, and I have along with me my senior representatives Josiah Sibley and Kaylee Millar. Here are some of the events that we have kicked off the school year with. I don't know how to work this.
Every year at Paloma Valley, we have a back-to-school spirit week to start off the new school year. This year was very successful as we had more kids go all out with their spirit wear than any other year. Our theme was tied in with our yearly theme, traveling around the world. Each day, ASB passed out Spirit Day accessories that represented the current Spirit Day for everyone walking into school.
Our class of 2020 seniors had the opportunity to paint their own parking spots, and this event had a successful turnout. The ASB senior class worked hard on this event, and seniors got there at 5 a.m. to begin painting. Everyone was finished by 12 in the afternoon. Overall, these paintings added a beautiful touch to our campus, and we have learned that we have some very talented seniors.
As the new school year is just getting started, we encourage our students to get involved with a wide variety of clubs that we offer at our school. We host our annual Club Rush each year in the hopes that students discover the different cultures that we have at Paloma Valley. This is a 3-day event held at during lunch, and it includes all clubs, and they set up their own tables and showcase their club.
Every year at Paloma Valley, we host a back-to-school night. Back-to-school night is a chance for parents to meet their child's teachers and to get more involved with the school as they are able to walk around our campus that their child attends every day. At back-to-school night, we provide the students and parents with a taco truck and frozen yogurt.
This is our second year that Paloma has hosted our AP pep rally for the students who are enrolled in one or more AP classes this school year. 3 of our teachers put together an amazing rally where they brought in a former Paloma Valley student, Emily Morris, who is now a producer on the Netflix series Stranger Things, to recognize students' academic accomplishments and keep them motivated.
Here's some of our fall sports. Girls golf, they just beat Chaparral High School. Girls volleyball is ranked 4th in CIF Southern Section. Football is 2-2. They just defeated Knight High School. Boys water polo just placed 3rd in their most recent tournament. Boys cross country, they just finished 4th at their most recent race. Girls tennis, they were undefeated until last Thursday. Lost a close match to Temescal Canyon. Last year we won 13 league titles, which was more than any other school in Riverside or San Bernardino County. We plan to make a tradition out of this.
Our Homecoming Spirit Week and pep rally was a huge success. Our Spirit Week tied into our Hollywood theme, and like every other Spirit Week, ASB handed out spirit accessories for each day, and we had many students go full out with their outfits. As for our pep rally, students had a great time enjoying the performances from our dance groups and cheer team. The gym was decorated with a chandelier to represent our Hollywood theme, and kids got a sneak peek of our homecoming dance.
A homecoming dance was a huge success Saturday night, selling over 1,000 tickets. The Wildcats had a blast. We provided the kids with a funnel cake truck, and we even brought in a silent DJ that was located in the new area outside of the gym, the Paloma Plaza. We'd like to thank the PUHSD school board and the cabinet members for providing our school with the funds, allowing us to enjoy this new addition to our campus.
Okay. Coming up in the month of October, we will have Pink Out Week, which all of our sports teams will host their Pink Out games to support the awareness of breast cancer. And also in that week will be the Menifee Bowl, hosted by us, Paloma Valley, against Heritage High School. And we're going to invite the Heritage crowd to join us in our support of breast cancer awareness as well. And that'll be October 18th. And then soon after that will be our Halloween Spirit Week. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, now from Perris High School, let's welcome student representatives Valeria Castillo and Heredita Corona.
Good evening, President Garcia and board members, Superintendent Bennett and Cabinet. I am Erendita Corona with my partner and fellow junior, Valeria Castillo. Together we are Paris High School board representatives. We had our second annual Panther Camp modeled after Heritage High School's Camp Legacy. Thank you, Ms. Garcia and ASB for the help in planning. That started off our first 3 days of school. Of all the activities over the 3 days, I think the letter to self has been my favorite. These letters are written by freshmen held for the next 4 years when they get them back as seniors to read. Some freshmen put money in the letter, sprayed perfume inside, or simply gave themselves a pat on the back for making it to graduation. These 3 days ended with our first Welcome Back to the Jungle pep rally, filled with games, performances, and just plain old spirit to kick off the new school year.
Our student of the month is Jordan Anderson. She is the editor-in-chief of our school newspaper. Ms. G, our journalism teacher, nominated Jordan because, as she says, I've been fortunate enough to have her with me for 3 years. She is positively extraordinary, a shining role model for other students, and all around a good person. Personally, I know Jordan, and she is a very kind and sweet Panther. Math teacher Ms. Garciola is our teacher of the month. Student Kaylin Campos says regarding Ms. Garciola that she is kind and patient with her and herself and with other students, and she appreciates that.
Our Family Engagement Center hosted parent nutrition classes with the City of Paris, where they gave the opportunity to pick food from our community gardens to use them in their own healthy dishes. Because it is a community garden, families from Pinacati and CMI joined us.
4 of our FFA career development teams competed at the LA County Fair field Saturday, September 14th, including our agricultural pest control, nursery, landscape, vet science, and vegetable crop. Not surprisingly, all 4 of our teams placed first. The counseling office would like to highlight that our graduation rate for class of 2019 was the highest in a long time, with a 90.28% graduation rate in our FAFSA and California Dream Act. Submissions were at 81% and 81% for 2019. The counseling office is now getting ready for the annual kickoff to college and currently has 86% of seniors committed to higher education.
This week is homecoming week and Spirit is in full effect. This year's theme is Las Vegas. The Spirit weekdays are matching up with Las Vegas hotels. To go with the colors and the fun of Circus Circus, today is Tie-Dye Circus Day. On Friday, we play Rim of the World High School, crowning our king and queen and just plain enjoying the Friday night lights as they will be our first home game of the year. Last year was a pleasure coming each month to present all of the amazing things that take place at Paris High. So much so I applied again as your school board rep. I look forward
to what this year has in store and sharing with you all. Thank you.
From Pinacati Middle School, student representatives Janelli Cortez and Sarah Rico? Syra, excuse me. Sarah's down there.
Good evening. I'm Janelli Cortez, Pinacati's ASB president.
And I'm Sariko, Pinacati's ASB vice president.
Recently, we had our first ever Welcome Back rally. Students have also been facilitating Friday lunchtime activities, which give students a chance to show school spirit by engaging in school activities. Webb successfully gave student tours and made all students feel welcome during the first week of school. Oliver Petty made motivational speaker spoke to all 8th graders in a school-wide assembly about perseverance and compassion. Our student lounge, a very important Puma VIP market, has been open. It is run by ASB students for students to have a relaxing lunch and be rewarded for their hard work.
This year's club offerings are Club Live, Yearbook, Avid, Newspaper Club, National Junior Honor Society, Lego Club, Masters of Code, Stagecraft, Movie Critics Club, Rainbow Club, Femineers, and Puma Poetry Slammers. As you can see, student participation is very high. Stagecraft has nearly 50 club members this year, our largest year ever. Students are in the designing phase of the Halloween maze. The Halloween maze will be open during Harvest Festival and Halloween dance during October. We invite you to come to see firsthand what we are doing here at Pinacati. All clubs are getting ready for our upcoming pep rally and the Harvest Festival next month.
Auditions are complete and production of our fall show is underway in drama production. Students will be bringing famous villains to life in our villain review show titled It's Good to Be Back. Second-year computer science students have just begun a unit learning how to create synthetic music with computer code. With the program called Sonic Pi, according to Mr. Anderson, Pinacati is one of the very few, if not only, schools this far out on the cutting edge of computer science curriculum in Riverside County. Thank you for all the support and resources.
And thank you for your time.
From Paris Lake High School, we have student representatives Leo Gio Albino and Priscilla Santoyo.
Good evening, governing board and cabinet members, and Mr. Garcia. I am a student representative of Paris Lake High School's ASB, and I would like to introduce my fellow ASB member and representative, Leonel Albeno.
First off, to begin our presentation, I want to thank President Garcia. I want to thank the governing board, the members of the cabinet, and the Superintendent Bennett for inviting us here to share the events that have been taking place at Paris Lake. Here we have a brief presentation summarizing the latest events and what's been going on.
On Thursday, August 22nd, Paris Lake High School's back-to-school night took place. Students were informed that if they brought at least one parent with them, they would receive 3 extra graduation tickets and free nachos. Overall, there were 66 parents that attended the event. Back-to-school night gave parents the opportunity to acquire information about their son or daughter's classroom experience. Teachers provided them with the objective of the subject and the requirements for a passing grade.
August 26th through August 30th was Paris Lake Spirit Week. On Monday, August 26th was Pajama Day, show a little spirit. Even though we were in the heat, we had a lot of people dress up. It was a lot of fun. On the second day, we had Meme Day. The third day, we had Western Day. Everybody was with their botas. The fourth day, we had Hawaiian Luau Day. And the fifth day, we had volleyball, which was teachers versus students. We had a lot of people come out, show their sports, and we also had guest grupo estilo 316 come and play during the game. It was a lot of fun. The teachers won.
On Friday, August 30th, Angela Drum, a college representative for Mount San Jacinto College, met with interested students to discuss topics such as academics programs, campus life, financial aid, and admission procedures. The purpose of the presentation was to motivate students to attend college and to present informational programs to probable students.
On September 4th, Jessica McGuire visited Paris Lake High School to educate students on how to become employed at the Amazon Fulfillment Center. The purpose of the guest speaker was to provide job-seeking students with the chance to learn more about potential employers and the opportunities available to them. Jessica McGuire provided information regarding the mandatory requirements and the positive aspects of working with Amazon. Students were allowed to ask questions throughout the presentation.
This year, the school enhanced the art room by bringing in new benches and other art equipment. The purpose was to provide students with a better learning experience. This also encouraged the students to get more motivated for school and allowed them to express their creativity.
To end this presentation, I would like to thank you guys for your time and your cooperation. Is there any questions regarding the presentation? Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 9.4, CSEA President Josh Rushing. No Josh? All right. Item 9.5, PSEA President Jason Miller.
Thank you for this time to speak. PSEA is also a proud supporter of the Constitution. PSEA is engaged in a disability insurance campaign. We've made this an item of primary importance over the last several weeks. PSEA feels that every member should have it because a serious disruption to a member's life can arise at any time. PSEA has worked with the cabinet recently to discuss different topics that have arisen at different sites. These topics have been small in nature, and the cabinet has done a commendable job in working towards solutions with various concerns that have come up. I was pleased with one item in particular whereby the cabinet took a safety concern with with a member very seriously, and through no fault of their own. It was not their problem that rose up. So PSEA's visited sites to talk to members about what to expect if they meet with administration. One area that has been discussed is representation. I thought it would be important to stress what representation is and is not for PSEA. PSEA's role in providing representation is to provide advocacy to PSEA members. Our representatives are there to protect the member and the contracts so that equity and fairness are prevalent in a meeting, and also to address administrative overreach if it occurs. But I think it is also important to discuss what representation is not. I think there's a myth out there about unions in general that they somehow keep bad teachers or employees in their job. We don't have that much authority. We do not represent unreasonable behavior on the part of an employee, but rather make sure process is followed and rights and due process are maintained. To that end, we continue to advocate for our members within the scope of our own roles and our own abilities. Thank you for this time to speak.
Thank you. Right after our comments. Item 9.6 is the information item. Comments by the Board of Trustees. Dr. Arau.
Thank you, President Garcia. I just want to share with you that I had the opportunity to see the Paris High School volleyball girls team play on September 10. I believe it was Tuesday, September 10. So they played really good. They won. They did a great job.
I'm glad we didn't dismiss the students yet because you're the ones I wanted to talk to. President Garcia made comment about my motivational skills, so I thought I would talk to the representatives about what an awesome job you're doing. The only suggestion I would make is listen to your disc jockeys and whatnot on the radio or some of the other people on television. They occasionally make a mistake. They don't bring it up. They just keep going. Don't apologize. Don't bring attention to it. You'll be surprised how many people won't even recognize that that mistake was made. When I was in what used to be called junior high school, my choir director, who decided I was going to sing a solo in front of 1,500 kids, calm me down by telling him, picture your best athlete or your big person on campus up there doing what you're doing. I was almost laughing so hard I couldn't start singing. So realize that it's not an easy thing to do. You folks are on a great journey. Also, the last thing is I hope you understand this. This is a once in a lifetime unique opportunity for the graduating class this year to have something that nobody else has ever had. If you could invite Barbara Walters as your keynote speaker, or just get her to be up there and say, I am Barbara Walters, and this is 2020.
I'd just like to thank the representatives from CMI. I made a mistake and did not introduce you, so I wanted to make sure that you were recognized, and thank you for your presentation. Okay.
So I could have swore Mr. Freeman stole some of my notes already. You all are great. You're the reason why we're here. We appreciate you speaking to us. Young man, Mr. Leo? Keep doing what you're doing, sir. You're speaking very well. Very well. Actually, both of you guys, everybody, to be honest with you. But you got my attention the way you came up with such confidence. Live life that way. Don't change. Just keep pursuing that, man. I want to thank CMI. I want to thank the Sheriff's Department. I want to thank the teachers, the principals, the apples, the oranges, everybody. You're all amazing. Thank you for welcoming us here as well. And so with that, that's my comments, and we'll move on. Oh, at this time, the youth, you're more than welcome to leave, and you're more than welcome to stay. The choice is yours. So now's the time. Now's the time. Moving along, item 10.1, invitation to address the Board of Trustees on non-agendized items. Are there any takers?
No cards this evening.
Thank you very much. Item 11.1 is an action item, consent calendar, approval of the consent calendar items. Is there a motion?
Second.
Mr. Nelson, Dr. Rao. Any discussion? Please vote. Item 11.1 is a 5-0 vote. Item 12.1 is the information item, technology update. Mr. Williams.
Good evening, Board President, Superintendent, Board and Cabinet. It just seems just recently I gave you a update at the end of last year, so I'm going to try not to repeat that. And basically for this update, the new information will be about the culture of the department, recent progress that we've made, and future steps. But I will give you a little bit of background because I can't resist when we talk about technology. So I always remind people that the Scholar Plus Teaching and Learning Initiative, the reason why we chose the name Scholar Plus is because all our decisions that we make, we try to make sure that we're focused on the students. So when we're having a budget discussion or we're working on things, we always, we called it Scholar Plus so that we're focusing on the students. All the Chromebooks say Scholar Plus, your Chromebooks say Scholar Plus. The open Wi-Fi that the students use say Scholar Plus, and it keeps us focused on the students on all our decisions. And when we created Scholar Plus, we started with desired outcomes. It's important that, I repeat that every time, it's important that we stay focused on our desired outcomes so that we don't have what's called mission creep, right? This is our mission and this is what we're working on, and sometimes you can creep a little bit far away from that, and we need to regroup. And so when we created our Scholar Plus Teaching and Learning Plan, we created desired outcomes. And there's some of those here. I can tell you I'm especially proud of the last one on providing equitable outcome to learning experience for all students, especially previously underserved populations. A little repetitive here, and I'm not going to go into detail on each of these blocks like I did last time, but I wanted you to know that nothing has changed. We're still fitting the pieces together. When we work in my department, we work on planning, we work on the operations part, professional learning, it's an important part, how we support student services with instructional resources, how we provide equity and access, and then how we're transformative. And it's a little background on how we work here. I would be remiss if I didn't brag about our techs. So far from the start of the year, they've had almost 2,500 help desk tickets. They've closed most of them, and I can explain that. We have an average backlog of 80. You might think, really, what does that mean? Well, that means we go home for the night, and there happens to be 80 tickets not closed, because who knows, they maybe came in at, we love it when they come in, at 2:59. That's awesome. Not really, I'm kidding. But we do go home for the night with 80 open help desk tickets, and then we quickly close them. From the beginning of the year, the technology department has almost 11,000 interactions, which means if they were helping you work on something, that help desk ticket is not closed until it's resolved. But they do log every interaction. So if they've updated, and that's to keep track of things. Another statistic is we have a 99% satisfaction rating. I joke, I probably caused the 1%. The 1% is a lot of times people aren't happy with the answer, although it's the right answer. They're just not happy that that's what they're getting, and that's what they're getting. We make sure that we manage the expectation. The average first contact is around 18 hours. That might seem high, but just so you know, anybody in the parish union, any staff member, not students, any staff, because the students go to the Scholar Bar, but any staff member can contact help desk at any time. We don't filter it through secretaries. We don't filter it through a point of contact. Anybody can email or call help desk, and sometimes those calls come in on the weekends, and so they stay open until somebody does first contact. So that's actually a pretty decent number on our first response, meaning, hello, I'm a human, I'm helping you. And most of the tickets are submitted by email, but 20% are by phone call. And what I can tell you is that we do, our techs love looking at this, because they say, man, every year we're doing better. Every year when we open up the school, our backlog gets better and better and better. And they're very proud of that. All right? I know how to use this. There it goes. All right. So for this update, kind of new information in case you don't know, because sort of technology is sometimes really mysterious, and our techs are like ninjas. They come in and solve the problem, and they get really good customer service, but you might not know how it happens. So we're going to talk a little bit about culture for this update, recent improvements and developments, and future developments. I can tell you that we work really hard on the culture of the department. I did a lot of work with big organizations and big human resources organizations on how you should run a department and how you can create employees that have meaningful work. And the first off, we have trust and relationships. That's paramount when you're having to do corrective action. It's important that first they know that you care about them. I often talk about meaningful work, and what that means for them is sometimes they might lose sight of what they're doing and why. And so we always bring it back to how their work immediately impacts the students and the staff, because I never want them to go home at the end of the day thinking, was I impactful? And so we talk about that often. I really want them to be creative and curious. A lot of times when a tech makes a misstep on a help desk ticket, and I say, hey, be a little bit more curious next time, they think, oh yeah, I could have been a little bit more curious, and I could have figured it out a little better, instead of saying, hey, you really could have done that better. We work on them being curious as to solve the problems. And one thing that we do that's unique here also is that every tech has a voice, and we do a thing where we suspend hierarchy when we're trying to solve problems. That means I'm not in charge, James not in charge. We try to sell slow, but he's not in charge, but he is. And we suspend hierarchy. And we say, don't be afraid to give your answers. And we use a bunch of communication channels, and that's how we solve problems. We encourage the techs to have high interest projects, not outside of the scope of their job, but if they're highly interested in the virtual reality headsets, then that's what they become point on. If they're highly interested in Arduinos, and they become point on those projects, and we work with them on that. I also, it's not all fun and games. I do establish clear expectations, but that's actually a misnomer. I think they establish clear expectations. They know what those expectations are, and they have high expectations for themselves. And the last couple of things is decisions are made at the lowest possible place. If a tech 3, an entry-level tech can make that decision, that tech can make that decision. They don't need to involve me or James or anybody else. They have the authority to make that decision and make that call, and it works really smoothly. They don't need to run everything up the flagpole within the reason, and they're really good about knowing, like, I should get a second opinion on that. But they don't have to go all the way to the top for their second opinion. They can go through the chain of command before it gets up here. And we all have sort of the core values, and that's Scholar Plus. And that's why we're here for good customer service. We're here to support. We're here to go up and above, and really to make it a great place to work. So this is a picture of our crew. I think everybody's listed, although we've hired new people since then. In case you're wondering what's happening on the bottom, if you're over a certain age, that's called the DAB. And some of them were successful at it, and some of them weren't. Randy knows the DAB. We know in our department that we're responsible for our own professional development. So we try to carve out some time during the calendar. This happened to be an early release day or a Friday where there were no students on campus, probably the Friday just before the last graduation. And I pull them all together because people aren't really needing us for a few hours, and we do professional development, and we help each other out. Any questions on culture before I move on? You can do them at the end too if you'd like. Some recent improvements, and I won't go through these long. I'm just going to go real quick because I know there's other presentations, and I see the board agenda is a lot longer towards the bottom of this end here. But we recently improved the district offer server room. The bells and paging at Paloma Valley High School. We upgraded all access points on every campus. It was a big chore, and we did it. We've transitioned to platforms like Canvas and Jamf, which help us run some of our devices. We've now jumped into the foray of touchscreen Chromebooks. We know that the future will be touchscreen. So for our PAL students, we're now issuing touchscreen Chromebooks to see how those work and to see how we can repair them. We're now issuing interactive flat panels. We're doing really creative with the life of projectors. And instead of replacing a projector in an old classroom and throwing good money after bad with a sound system that's not really up to par, we're able to get at interactive flat panels. We're real strong on identity management, and that's how we protect student data. And one of the things that you might be familiar with, Mr. Bennett's update, is we do have a safety management self-harm alerts that help students and protect them against bullying or self-harm. And so those are some recent developments in the last year. Some pictures. So the picture on the far right was the old server. As you can see, we were doing everything we can to possibly cool it down. It was towards its end of life on how we did that. The middle picture is some work. Maurice, by the way, became a citizen in this year, and he told me he was going to stop by HR today to make sure that he had his citizenship papers. So told him you're free to do that. And that in the middle picture is Slova and Cynthia working on the new servers. The last picture is the development of our server room, where it's an in-row cooling, so we're not dependent on the cooling of the building. That has its own cooling system and its own condensers and its own UPS, so we're not dependent on anything else. We can pretty much keep good temperature there. That's a huge development that we've been trying to do for a long time, and to try to do it in the most, to not bring down the network, but sometimes we had to. Another recent development is this was the bells and paging at Paloma Valley High School. I used to teach there. I think Nick Hilton made a joke one time about wires like that. He said the reason how they ran those wires is they took a thread and they put it on a rat and they put it on a mouse and they had it run through, and where the rat ended is where the speaker ended up being put. But behind the wall there was a lot of twisted pair copper lines and this huge apparatus in the middle that ran the bells and paging. And the last picture is nothing. We took that all out. It's now run from our servers. That's all gone. And we did that at Paloma Valley High School. This is the touchscreen Chromebooks that we've been pushing out to the PAL students. This was a very impactful day that I came to visit them. So I can have him come up and talk about it. We've heard firsthand stories from parents saying how impactful it was that their students are now who have different fine motor control abilities, how the touchscreen has helped them. And those are some recent improvements. Some future improvements, I'll go quick through these. Just so you know, board, you can trust that we're continually doing forecasting on keeping this district future-proof. We're relentless on this. We're building a network resiliency. I'll talk a little bit about that. Of course, equity and access, including bandwidth at home. There was a little update last week in the superintendent's update. We're trying to work out a deal. We need to be leaders on broadband and capacity so that the programs that Student Services pushes out, that we can support those because those become really research heavy. Access to digital content, interoperability, I'll talk a little bit about that, and that we need to really lead this digital transformation. And then the pie in the sky thing is hardware as a service. I won't go into detail on that, but the future of hardware in education isn't hardware on a campus, it's hardware as a service, it's hardware somewhere else, and the information is piped in. I won't go into detail on that. So future improvements, and I'm almost done this network topology. We're really working on the next E-rate cycle to come up with different architecture for our network. The picture on the right is our current scheme as sort of a spoke hub type of layout. And if we could work on getting the fiber optics in a different arrangement, we would build in some resiliency. So if one node went down or one school went down or one server went down or the backup server went down, we would still be up and running because other architectural designs would be able to keep it up and we'd just be pulling that from another location. I won't go into detail. James might talk more about that. When we were talking about interoperability, that really should have come into current developments because we're really high on data privacy, security, and making sure that we improve data quality and that we're following a great data governance. But it still is in our future plans because I don't think we're quite there yet. We're in high. We've integrated with our systems and we have mandatory specs. But there still are some legacy systems that require like Student Services to manually update data, and we want to move away from that. It's more secure if we can have all systems be integrated and not have to manually update it. And so that, it's kind of like it was really easy to get to low to medium. Like that was easy. Got to low to medium real quick. It was a little harder to get to really high performing. That was a little easier, but to get that last bit out where all systems are brought in line, it's proven to be more difficult, but we're working on it. Those were the three things: culture, current state, and recent developments and future developments. Any questions? Yes.
I'd like to thank you very much for the Scholar Plus. One of my daughters benefited quite a bit by going over there, and it was a totally different environment set up for her. The structure was perfect. Her whole attitude about school changed positively, and I learned a lot about how she's a lot more responsible than I had thought. And I was really pleased with the outcome. One suggestion I have, if it hasn't already been brought up, is that I believe, a few years ago, I went through the leading edge blended learning class, and I think that the staff at that school, at Scholar Plus, would benefit from that. So if they haven't done it yet, I would like to suggest that you consider having the staff over there go through that leading edge. It's a fascinating and very helpful class.
I agree. Thank you for those words. You know, having the infrastructure and the backbone for everything to just work, for those teachers to be able to access the material and the students to be able to access the material. We don't make a big hullabaloo about it. They're just able to access it. They don't know how the sausage is made. They don't know how that figures out. It just works, and we want to continue that. And for your point about the leading edge, I'm also leading edge certified as a teacher and as an administrator. That's a great point about, I always remind people, don't forget how we got here. And I can tell you how we got here is that all the tech coaches are leading edge certified and other teachers are leading edge certified. So for not forgetting how we got here, it's a good idea to regroup and say, hey, let's work with the county that offers those leading edge certifications. And if you're not familiar with that, there's basically like 12 or 13 domains about leading edge certification. And it's kind of like you work on this module and you use this piece of lesson planning showing that you know how to do this, and you work on this and you use this sort of lesson planning on proving how you meet all those needs to teach in a digital and blended learning. All right, questions? Thank you.
Item 12.2, security update.
Good evening. Before
before I get started, we've been very busy. A lot of vaping, a lot of fighting, freshmen, a lot of freshmen, a lot of freshmen. Yeah. Well, the freshmen are going to lead us to vaping, I'm sure. Yeah, I was talking to Principal Santos when we came in today. You know, they want to set their flag and plant their flags and show that they're here, so they're working overtime. I haven't been with you guys since January. Did I push the wrong button? Okay. So in February, we had our training, 3-day training, and we went through the subjects that are up on the screen. We did a lot of scenarios. They were kind of tabletop. We would put the question up on the board. They would read through it, tell us what they would do. We would go through the whole process of how we do stuff. Crowd control, legal updates. And we talked about situational awareness and command presence. We wanted them to understand that how you present yourself is important out there. So we talked a lot about that. Go next. So this summer, before I get to the training we did this summer, I went to the Safe Schools Conference this summer. I met with a lot of directors of security throughout the summer, as well as some school police chiefs. Just talk about what's going on, what they're seeing, stealing ideas from them, some of them trying to steal ideas from me. So just good conversations. So we met for a couple of days in August, and we did a full day of 360, and we introduced some of the techniques to deal with more aggressive or violent non-students, be it at football games or folks who don't belong on our campuses. Special ed came in. Dr. McNair spoke with our group for over an hour, how we can more assist them. We got education on special education from the whole gambit, from the most severe all the way down. Our guys learned a lot. They learned what they should be doing in the classrooms and what the staff in the classrooms should be doing, so that was important for them. We also introduced our general orders, which I'll get to in a few minutes. We talked about radio procedures. Communication on the radio is important. We had some problems last year with things being heard that weren't being said. So we're looking at introducing the 10 and 11 codes, probably sometime in October. So we went over those, and it was kind of daunting to them, so we had to postpone it a little bit. And we're going to continue training on that, and we have been doing that over the last month or so. We did some team building. A lot of our guys spent some time last year working on campuses they weren't assigned to. So it was important to me that they need to know each other on a personal level, because you never know who you're going to be working with at what time. So it's always good to know each other on a first name basis, not just, oh, you're wearing the same shirt, we must be working together. It's just good to know each other. We also did a different type of scenarios with the school resource officers. We were out at Paris High School for the beginning of the morning, and we had 6 scenarios that we ran in different locations throughout the school, and they were activities that they had to do, stuff that gets them thinking. We had a bomb scenario. We had person with a gun stuff they will experience, stuff they have experienced, and some things they've never experienced before. And all of them loved it because they were thinking about things that they didn't think about before. How am I going to deal with this? And now some of them are actually doing it in the grocery store and at the movie theater and at home. So continuously thinking, that's what we want them doing. Our security focus, which is a continuation from last year, safety first. Safety first of the campus supervisors, because if they're safe, they can provide security to the students. We want to create a safe and secure environment for student learning and teachers teaching. We also are working on providing consistent security services to all campuses. Say that fast 5 times. Although the schools are different, we want to try to provide the same service at each school So whenever we move a campus supervisor to any school, they know what they're doing, and any administrator can expect that same high-quality service from every campus supervisor, no matter what school that they go to. We're also proactively engaging issues as they occur, and a lot of our issues come from off campus. You know, we can't continue to look inward. We have to look outward and get ahead of these things before they get on our campus, so we can notify the SROs or take whatever steps we need to take. And I am happy to say that there is significant progress in limiting the non-security activities we talked about last year. The principals have really worked in a proactive way to help move away from the campus supervisors on some of these things. But the campus supervisors are still backups on some of these things if they don't have enough staff to do it. So it's not perfect, still a work in process, but we've made some significant progress. For this year, we're going to focus on communication, improving communication amongst ourselves and with our administrators. So we'll be meeting monthly. I will be meeting monthly with the campus supervisors, or the lead campus supervisors. We're going to have the leads meet with the administrators more often. So they're hopefully meeting with the APs who are in charge of security once a week. And then I want them to meet with the principals once a month. And the idea behind that is a 10, 15-minute just talk about what's the status of the school, what's going on, are there any issues you're seeing going on, so the principal can firsthand hear what's going on. And if the principal's heard some stuff or concerned about something, you can bring it up to the lead. And that way we're dealing with these problems before they become huge headaches. We're getting ahead of them. So that should have already been taking place. And I know that some of them have been scheduled, and we're busy, so we can't always do them. But some of them have taken place, and I'm getting good feedback on them. And again, as I said, we're using the 10 and 11 codes and the penal codes. And that's just going to be for the campus supervisors from day to day. In an emergency situation, of course, we'll go to plain English like we're trained to do. I have been working with the Director of Student Services rather closely for our critical incidents. If someone's talking about doing violence to the school, or we hear about something that's really get your ears up, he and I make sure that we're both in the loop because we're both going to be involved in it. We just want to make sure that the school has all the help that it needs, and that's been working out pretty good. I talked earlier about the general orders, which is basically your security manual. We're calling it the general orders. We talk about issues such as code of conduct, general duties, use of force, reporting major incidences. Those went out to all the campus supervisors in August. We reviewed them. We talked about them. They're our Bible now, if you will. It seems to be, they like it, they're using it. One of the meetings that the leads is supposed to have is they're supposed to sit down with the administration and talk about the general orders. That's one of the ways to make sure that meeting takes place, so they can review that with them. It's a kind of a stolen product from some places, some good ideas taken from other places, and we ignored some bad ideas from other places as well. And they'll be constantly reviewed by me and my leads throughout the year, so we can update if there's a change in the district's philosophy on something or a change in the law. We will update those right away and get them out to everybody. Next one. And then the upcoming training for this year, in addition to the PD days coming up in October, we're hoping to get 2 to 4 folks out on the bike training. We're going to have some additional 360 tactical conversations and tourniquets. We're going to issue tourniquets to all our people out there. And those will be in addition to the ones that are already out there in the Stop the Bleed kits that were put out. We're issuing, let me back up. So the SROs are doing consistent training constantly with the campus supervisors. Any chance they get, they're running through scenarios. They're talking about emergency situations or people on campus, so they can continue to work closely together. We're issuing more equipment. We just issued flashlights, again, the tourniquets. We put gloves out. And then we're always looking, and that's one of the conversations I'm having with the other heads of securities is, what are you guys putting out in the field? So we're looking at everything to see how we can benefit from that equipment. That's all I have.
Thank you. With the environment that we have these days, with the fear and the realization of violence from the outside on campus, there have been some really crazy ideas thrown out. At least they're crazy because I think they are. But I was wondering if, in one of the things about communication, one of the problems that I had as a classroom teacher was that if an emergency came up, I was not always able to get a hold of the office, either because I couldn't get to the phone or because nobody would ever answer. And I was wondering, is it possible to issue those speaker things that you have like on security people and the police that they could maybe get for staff people so they could communicate better? And the other thing I was thinking of is maybe not necessarily in the classroom, but outside of the classroom, people who are traveling around could have those body cameras like the police have, that kind of, so people can see what's going on right away rather than have to wait for somebody to describe it. Those are just my crazy ideas. Thank you.
Sure. Any other crazy ideas or questions? No? All right. Thank you.
Item 12.3 is an information item, free application for federal student aid, FAFSA update.
President Garcia and the board, we want to come out and just give a quick update about FAFSA. Also look at some of the historical information that kind of got us to this point where we reached the point of a few months ago, you approving FAFSA as a graduation requirement. So just to start off this slide, it's a little difficult to see, but it will kind of highlight for us some starting points back in 2013. This right here shows you the degree attainment of individuals by some of the most populous regions in the United States. And so in particular, the top one shows where San Bernardino, Riverside County is in the center in regards to population, but at that particular time, at the very bottom in regards to individuals that are actually attaining degrees. And so at that particular time, it was 27%. And I have an additional slide that kind of shows you the 4 urban areas with the highest proportions are right there to your left, and it kind of shows you the percentage of those attaining bachelor degrees. To the right, you'll see the 4 urban areas with the lowest proportion with post-secondary degrees, which was Houston, Phoenix, and Tampa. And once again, Riverside, San Bernardino area was at 27% at that particular time. Within that work, we applied for a grant along with several other districts in our local area, which came together as what is currently still called the Riverside County Educational Collaborative, which is a grassroots movement focused specifically on how do we increase post-secondary access for our students. And so that's the work that we've been engaged in collectively, not just in isolation, but we've been trying to be leaders in this work with that particular group. So that group started off with us. I think at that particular time, it was Julie, it was a couple of other individuals that were in there in the room, and I think at that time it was about 20 or 30 of us. That group has expanded to about, probably over 100, Julie, you would say, individuals coming together, kind of like a think tank, focused on this important work. Yeah. So initially it was leaders from these particular school districts. Since then, they have expanded to specific think tanks around these specific goals. So each one of these goals now that we developed at that time, they have specific think tanks that are focused on those. And so with the far left, top corner, increase the percentage of students applying to 3 or more colleges to 60%. That was some of the goals that we set. Left-hand corner, increase the percentage of FAFSA and DREAM Act completions from 52% to 93%. And then you see increase the percentage of students enrolling in post-secondary education from 52% to 65%, and then increase the number of students who are college-ready using several indicators. And there's a list of indicators there, A to G completion, AP dual enrollment, and all those key indicators that we knew supported kids enrolling in college and also being successful. In addition to that, in the backdrop, we also had what was taking place based on this data was the fact that the median family income had been stagnant, yet the cost of college was increasing significantly. So that was another additional item that was driving this work. And so you can see that for yourself, that college expenses are jumping radically. In addition to that, what we were realizing on an annual basis, you know, in the state of California, there's $500 million that was never claimed by students, just for the simple fact that they weren't applying for the money that is available for them in regards to the FAFSA. And so, and basically these are students who just never submitted their application. So, and then the middle box there will show you kind of cost and kind of highlighted in red. Cost was the reason that many of those students were not going to college, and more than 80% of them that actually qualified, the key indicator was the fact that they could not afford to go to college. Down at the bottom, it identifies in red 72% higher odds students would be persisting than their peers if they actually filed. 72% higher odds that they would actually show up. And then lower income students have 122% higher odds of persisting than their low income peers who do not file for FAFSA and actually showing up and attending college. And so we saw that as a really key indicator, kids actually having a very clear pathway to pay for college, that alone would increase the chances that kids would actually show up. And so this is just estimate, and this is a rough estimate in terms of what missed opportunities we have at the local level here from our previous, this is our previous graduating class, Julie? Previous graduating class. So basically, Cal Grant A, if you look at Cal Grant A, which is requiring a 3.0 or higher, probably about over $600,000 were left on the table last year because of the kids who did not apply. Cal Grant B kind of breaks down 1.6 million, that's 279 students with a 2.0 or higher who didn't fill out their FAFSA. That's $1.6 million left on the table. And in the Pell Grant, we're at about 1.2 million, that's 210 kids who received free or reduced lunch who didn't fill out their FAFSA. And once again, it comes up, the accumulation is about $3.5 million left on the table of kids who did not apply for money that possibly was there available for them. And these are low-end estimates. These are on the high end. So we kind of took a low-end estimate of what kids could actually apply for. These are just some legislation components that are out there. AB 215, it was signed in 2018, and you see kind of highlighted, I'll just underline some issues so you don't have to read the entire slide. This was a bill that was introduced by Governor Brown that basically calling for school districts to ensure that each of his pupils receive information on how to properly complete and submit the free application for FAFSA or the California DREAM Act. And so basically, while you're in school, we have to ensure that all kids receive this information. Additionally, there was a letter sent to all superintendents in California to encourage the adoption of Race to Submit strategies. Race to Submit was adopted here locally by RCEC, that group that we're a part of. We started locally in Riverside, and it's expanded to the state level. That's across the state. We're asking everyone to participate and see how can we ensure more and more kids are completing their FAFSA. Lastly, in regards to legislation, we have several states right now, just recently, the entire state now is requiring that everything as a graduation requirement that kids actually complete their FAFSA. So to the left, you have Louisiana. I think in the center, you have Texas, and to the right, you have Illinois. And so these are the states that require all kids complete FAFSA as a graduation requirement. Possibly AB 1617 was introduced earlier this year, and that was for the state of California. California could be next, but once again, that legislation hasn't gone through. But legislation has been introduced in regards to the possibility of it becoming a state requirement for graduation because individuals see the importance of students completing FAFSA in the fact of how it relates to students enrolling in college. These are just some numbers that kind of breaks down Race to Submit achievements. Kind of when this work was started in 2014, you see that we started off, it was about 15,000 kids that were submitting the FAFSA on an annual basis, and you'll see the number jump to 19,000 the following year, 20,000, 21,000, and now up 2018. It was 22,000 kids that are actually submitting their FAFSA, which always results. The big connection is not just about the FAFSA, but it's about the fact that when kids submit their FAFSA, there's a higher chance that kids will actually enroll in college. And these numbers kind of coincide a little bit with this work because you'll see once again, this is California college going rate for Riverside County. The work started in 2014. We were at 15,800 kids who were enrolling, and then by 2018, as we were doing this work, that number did increase to 18,274, and we're waiting for the numbers to come out this year to see if those indicators are showing some improvement as well. So this is the conversation that we had. I think President Garcia and Dr. Rao, we had together in terms of just the opt-out, the opt-in and opt-out process. Wanted to make sure that as we work with our families this year, this is the actual slide that we will include in presentations this year to communicate that families do have the opt-out process in place. And we talk about a process in terms of making sure it is a great opportunity to meet with parents, to bring them in, to talk through the importance of this, because oftentimes, I think sometimes it's just education, meeting with parents. If we meet with parents, there's a very good chance, once we review the benefits, there's a possibility that they might go ahead on and complete the fast at that particular time. Yes.
Quick question, are you also gonna have that in Spanish as well?
Yes, it'll be in Spanish. Well, I'm going to ask it. It's already in Spanish? Thumbs up, yeah. And so we have our Dial-In for Dollars every year right around February. That's when the entire district comes together, and we're all on the phone with those last group of kids, and we're calling and trying to figure out any kid that has not signed up. We come together as a team, the cabinet and all administrators in the district. We spend a day really calling parents to see and confirm why haven't they completed their FAFSA. So that's what we've done in the past. What I wanted to do was have Juan come up very quickly. He'll share just briefly his story last year. He was able to move his school site from 70% to above, I believe, 81%. Yeah. Some work that he did personally. So I want him to share a little bit about that and some of the conversation he had with his parents.
So this was a great first start for us to kind of kick off our FAFSA completion rates for our students. Being able to have district personnel being able to call homes directly. One of the things that I've found out in terms of working at our school for the last few years has been that my parents are a lot more responsive when we're actually making personal phone calls as opposed to sending dialers out. They like to be able to kind of ask questions, and if they have any doubts, they kind of ask. And usually when we do that, we have a lot more participation from our parents. So this was the first step of what we did. Now, one of the other things that our counseling department did, Dr. Dorado did an amazing job of kind of breaking down the stereotypes and being able to kind of get the students to be able to come and open our doors and really openly talk between Dr. Dorado and the Avid program about the for our undocumented students, our DACA students, the DREAM Act, to be able to kind of build a comfortable environment for them to be able to come and turn in their applications. So little by little, she was meeting individually with the families during the weeks leading up to the submission deadline. And it allowed for students and parents to be able to feel more comfortable, and those students that wanted to go, they can actually apply. The other thing that we did is when we went to the conference that Dr. Newman mentioned a little bit earlier, we started kind of thinking outside the box about what are some things that we can do personally to be able to kind of get more students to apply. And looking at our percentage rate, and Dr. Dorado, myself, and some of the district personnel that were there, we weren't very happy with our rates. And so it just happened to coincide that we were going to have spring break coming up before the last deadline. And so one of the things that I committed to doing was going around and visiting homes of our students who hadn't submitted their FAFSA, to make personal visits at their homes, to be able to say, hey, what's keeping you from submitting the FAFSA, and actually talking to the parents. So I was able to, I did probably about, during that week, that's all pretty much all of what I did during that time. I ended up visiting about 70 to 80 homes, kind of plotted it out. Luckily, I have a great secretary who knows which streets are close to each other. And so she was able to kind of plan out my visits. And so out of those 70 to 80 homes that I visited, sometimes the parents weren't home. And so I left a flyer with information, and we ended up adding a Saturday school the day before the deadline. And so it just so happened that it was the week of spring break, then the Saturday school when we came back, and then the deadline was going to be the following week. So for those parents that weren't home, we left flyers in their homes. I left my business cards, said, hey, just want to let you know I stopped by, wrote a little message for them, and promoted our Saturday school event to say, hey, this is the last time you're going to have an opportunity to be able to turn this in by the March 2nd deadline. Hopefully you can come. We ended up having probably about 14 to 15 parents that ended up coming to that Saturday school, and we sat down with them one-on-one. We had representatives from the college. We had Dr. Dorado available to be able to answer questions and kind of walk them through the process of submitting the FAFSA online. We had Dr. Padilla as well attend. And so that push, between all the other things that we did, was able to get us to that 81% that we were able to obtain this year. The one things that I, so it was going and doing the Measure W walks allowed me to be able to kind of get to know our community a lot closer, and being able to kind of have conversations with a lot of our parents. So it was very, so part of the rationale and part of the decision-making process to kind of be able to do this, the Paris community turned out and did really well in terms of the support for Measure W, that I felt that, if they were willing to tax themselves to be able to give us the facilities that we're going to have at Paris High School, there's no reason why we shouldn't be going out there and communicating with their parents so that with the students, for them to be able to know that they can also benefit to get free money if they wanted to go to college. And so that was kind of the mentality kind of going in, and we saw some results that were very good, and hope that we can continue to do that. And so, I've learned that most of everybody who lives in Paris has a dog. And sometimes you can't just ring on the doorbell. You have to go through the gate to be able to get to the doorbell. And when I saw the dogs, I didn't go in. I just kind of left them by the gate. But the parents were very receptive. They welcomed us. Some of them invited me over for dinner. But it was just, it was just a quick 10-minute visit that really paid dividends, and we're very proud of what we were able to accomplish this year.
Just a few. Oh, yes, go ahead, sure. That's okay. No, you're good. Oh, there. Right, okay. Cool. So real briefly, just district celebrations that are coming up this year. The first one is our kickoff to college, October 16, 2019. I believe it was President Garcia or someone asked that we invite you out to that. So we'll make sure we get that information out to you when we have our kickoff to college, so you can come out and see the great work that we're doing at our schools. In addition to that, throughout the day, we'll have our FAFSA submission. We'll have celebrations for all our kids that completed their FAFSAs, and then we'll also have our college signing day. So we want to make sure we get those dates on your calendar as well. Love to have you come out and celebrate all the good work that our school sites are doing and ensuring that the kids are going to that next level. Okay? Any questions? That concludes my presentation.
I just would like to make a comment, Dr. Newman. First of all, thank you for explaining this, doing this presentation. Yeah, traditionally, I think for the last several years, Parish Union has been one of the top completing the FAFSA completion. Heritage High School was in the 90s, I think, high 90s, I believe. Just for, to make it very clear, right, the discussion that we had last year was not about support, whether or not we were going to support the FAFSA completion or not, or the campaign, or if it was going to benefit or not our students. There was no question about that. The fundamental element that we address, that I think you address it a little bit at the beginning, and you know what I'm talking about. And that's why I want to clarify this, because the issue, what was the issue?
I am not, there's a few issues that we had a conversation about.
The main issue was, I want to remind you.
Oh, no, so if you let me go back, and I'm thinking back to the conversation. Your issue was you wanted us to keep to the spirit of the work that we were doing in terms of helping kids and not make it a legal requirement where we forget the heart behind what we're doing in terms of helping kids get to college.
And we approved in June to make it a high school graduation requirement, but at the same time, we approved it that we had the opt-out form. And that was my point, because in the previous presentations when we were addressing the students, the opt-out form was not mentioned, and that was approved. So if we did something, we approved high school graduation completion, fill out the FAFSA, and we are advertising, we need to advertise everything. First of all, because that is the right thing to do, right? And second of all, because when we talk about the situation, the fear that there is in the community, and also when we had the meeting with President Garcia, you and I, we talk about increasing the level of information for the parents. Mostly because, I don't know, you didn't mention it here, we talk about the new rule that is called the public charge rule, that is going to become effective October 15 if it's not blocked by the courts. So that is another layer that is there in the community. So what I was asking, and I am asking, is to educate our community and provide all the information that they need so we can try to minimize and decrease the level of fearness that exists there, right? Because a lot of our parents and our students, they don't know. So for the ones who don't know what the public charge law is, starting in October 15, is that there are certain benefits, public benefits, that people apply for that is going to have a negative effect when people apply to, we can call to go to the next level on their legalization status. And it can have a negative effect. Fortunately, grants and FAPS applications and loans is not going to have any effect, but our community needs to know that, right? And that's what we need to include. So I'm really glad that in the presentation at the end, there is the opt-in, opt-out, right? And that they know that they have that option, right? And you said that you were going to be talking about a program from a local organization. Is that going to be something you're going to be talking about?
I'll give you an update right now.
Okay, coming up. Oh,
So
sorry,
no,
I thought you said I'm done.
No, I was done. I was done, but so I have a meeting coming up with TODEC next week. So it's on the calendar. They have actually already presented at our first school. They presented at CMI about public charge. They'll be presented at Heritage next. And we're working in our office to figure out how can we get more and more information out and be a part of that information. So I'm gonna meet with her next week. I believe it's the 25th at 10 a.m. The lady that's in charge over there to talk specifically about us partnering together to continue to get that information out.
Okay, well, thank you for doing this presentation that reaffirms our commitment to support our students to go to college, but doing it the right way and addressing it conscientious.
And I think I appreciate you bringing that up and putting that on our radar because it's extremely important, and our parents are definitely feeling anxiety behind that as well. So we definitely want to make sure we're including that in our conversation. Okay.
Item 12.4 is board self-evaluation.
Okay, so earlier in the fall, or I mean last year near the end of the year, we talked with the board about them wanting self-evaluation to be able to look at themselves, how they're working together, how they're focused on what's going on in the district. So we set up to have that each board member had an online self-evaluation to record their individual thoughts. None of the board members had access to the other board members' answers when they were doing that. The report is a record of individual perceptions at the time the board members took the survey. The report indicates the range of perceptions, and they really push it perceptions and not facts. It's how the board was feeling at that time about what was going on. CSBA really pushes saying that the board should be doing this regularly, at least one time a year, maybe two, depending on if there's issues that really need to be covered. The board evaluates themselves to demonstrate the district's leadership is committed to continuous learning at every level. School boards evaluate themselves to create a culture of using feedback to get better. If we're not looking at ourselves, and what we're doing, how can we improve on what we're working on? School boards evaluate themselves to demonstrate accountability to the community that elected them. And an elected entity, the board has to learn how to use the data that they do get to improve what's going on. I know you all have the report there, and I think there's reports back there if the public wanted to see some of them also. The report provides the board with perception data, how trustees individually perceive the board's effectiveness. And you'll see on there's a code, it's color coded. Green is the top, the best that you could get. All board members rated the item almost always or often. So it was either the first or second one everyone voted on, picked that. Blue, it's a majority of the board were almost always or often. And that's a strength to the majority of the board. Yellow is a majority of the board rated them as less often or rarely. And then red is if they were all of them related, less often, rarely, and not sure. So kind of looking through, I have the clicker, don't I? So if you look at the very first page in there, this has to do with board unity. And you see that the board had rated themselves as blue on the first three categories, staying focused on district priorities, commitment to common vision, and the board is focused on achievement of all students. And something they voted, you had put down, you'd do very well is working together. And also individual board members do not undermine board decisions as the top ones in that first category. On the second one, roles and responsibilities, they had you have two blues there. Board members agree on the role and responsibilities of the board and the superintendent. And 11 was individual board members do not attempt to direct the superintendent. Then green on those three middle categories, which were the strong points for the board. Board members follow agreements regarding speaking for the board. That would be like if you're out in public, if you're making comments, those are your own comments. It's not a comment for the board. Board members keep confidential matters confidential. And the board gives direction to the superintendent only at board meetings. So those are the ones that had been rated green as the strengths of the board. The next page is board culture. Almost all of them green there, treating the superintendent with respect, managing internal conflicts in a productive manner. Board members agree to follow agreements how they will act towards each other. Board members treat each other with respect, and board members demonstrate they understand the other perspectives. And the one blue one there was board members usually discuss questions about agenda with the superintendent prior to the board meeting. And you can see where people had rated it in different categories there. Board operations, this is one that we had a yellow one. We didn't have any red ones, which is good to see that we don't have a major dysfunction going on. But all board members receive the same information. And that's something we've talked about, and I think we've improved on that as we move forward. Green was the board governs within board adopted policies, bylaws, and the protocols to manage board operations was green. And the rest of them were blue there. Board members receive timely information. Board members receive adequate information. And I don't have to read it to you. You're all educated people that could read it. But I'll look at the ones that the setting directions was all blue through there, which means that there's some work to do, but not in terrible shape. And the structure also was all blue. The board demonstrates commitment to district policies and goals. Did I miss a page? Oh, mine's two-sided, that's why. I didn't turn over the other side. That's what I get for doing my own copying. I don't let Anna do it. The board meetings, we had three green ones there in the board meetings. The board agrees to the roles of the board president in managing the board meetings. The board confines its meetings to its reasonable length of time. And the board effectively manages community input at board meetings. So those are strengths that the board felt very strongly about. The blue ones there, again, you can see they're looking at district priorities. Board members come in well prepared to the meetings. Board effectively uses data in decision-making, and then good relationship between how long the board spends on an agenda item and the importance of the item. The bottom of that page, there's one in board development that was yellow. The board reviews its governance agreements regularly. That's something we've talked about, and we'll continue to talk about as we move forward. The strong one there, the board agrees on the process for identifying officers was green there. And the other two blue. So I think I did number 4 already, page 4, right? So looking at the last page, page 5, accountability across the board on that one was all blue there. And there's some rated in the rarely column, so those are the ones we need to work on and try to improve on. And the final one, community leadership. The board rated itself a 4, a green on 54 and 57. So those are strengths of the board, and the other two, community leadership on educational issues, pursues partnerships, and the board informs the community of district priorities, progress, and needs. I never changed one page with this, did I? That's why they shouldn't let me up here. I didn't use the clicker. So these are things that will be able to spark some conversation amongst the board and myself and the cabinet as we move forward on how we think we can improve in a couple of the areas that we were showing yellow, and maybe even in the blue areas. The CSBA recommends that the board look at no more than 3 to 5 things to really focus on for a year, because you get too many, you get nothing done. If you look at 2 or 3 or 4, there's 5 of them, and you can try to work on. So as we can, I can meet with Mr. Garcia and see how we want to approach this and work in the future. Any questions?
I noticed in the page number 3, the board reviews the governance agreements regularly. I can say by myself, but today, and even though this is a different item that is on the agenda, but I want to use it as an example. This is a board policy and that was approved, right? It was a board agreement. Before I say anything else, do you know when was approved this?
It's 2018, I think it's.
2018?
If you look at the last page, it's on the bottom of the last page.
And before this one, we didn't have any?
If it doesn't show previous dates, then we wouldn't have had them.
Probably we have something, right, before that. The reason that I'm mentioning this is, and I was interested in when this board policy was approved, is because I can say that I was unaware of some of this. Even though we were talking about that, if you see one of the ways to ensure equity, it says on number 1, page number 2 of 7, assessing student needs based on data desegregated by race, ethnicity, socioeconomic, and cultural backgrounds in order to enable equity, focused policy, planning, and resource development decisions. The importance of this date is that for many years, it seems that either we didn't have this policy or the board was unaware of this policy. Because if you remember, a few years ago when I proposed to start working with data desegregation, that by the way, I appreciate it because that's what we have been doing for several years. Even one of the board members said, hey, Jose, you were assistant superintendent. Mr. Bennett doesn't have the time to be doing what you are asking to do. And that was more policy. If it was there. That's what the importance of the date, you know. And I honestly didn't know that it was more policy. And nobody else knew that it was more policy, right? So I'm glad that we are identifying this item.
Back then, I wouldn't have been doing it anyway.
36, you know, but that called my attention. And that stuck in the back of my mind because, well, but this is for the benefit of our students, right? And that I didn't think in terms of ensuring that we were in compliance with our policy. The only objective was to ensure that that everybody had the same opportunity, that we identified the areas that we needed to grow, right? But that's my point. That's the only thing, right? We learn from the past, and the only objective is to focus on the future and how we can benefit. So we can benefit from this experience on becoming more knowledgeable, and that is part of my commitment that I'm going to be doing in order to learning about the board policies and the agreements that we approve. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, are our board policies available online?
Yes. You go under the school board link on the left-hand side, and it'll say agendas and gamut for board policies.
So gamut is whoever the board policies are listed. Thank you.
Do you think probably, and I'm sorry, Mr. President, it was just kind of a proposal, right, to consider by the trustees, maybe having a twice a year or once a year kind of a select some part of the board policies based on our priorities, on our vision for the district, and review it so we know what is what we have already there, right? Because we might not know what other things are there. Yes, because if I know that we have them online and I can access, but honestly, I don't think I haven't done it in in 5 years in the detail that the community deserve, that we become knowledgeable. So that can be one approach.
We'll work on getting that together. Any other questions, Tony?
Grant, I've looked at board policy before, and it leads you through a lot of different links and into a lot of different areas. It was very hard to understand at first. But, you know, if we have an immediate question that we need some information, can we present that to you, and maybe you have
And
some
we
other
get, like,
research?
just
that for
Dr.
us?
Rao did with this on
Yes.
Friday.
Yeah.
Out at the equity conference, and we got it together we haven't got to that point on the agenda yet, but,
Yeah.
but we were able to gather that information as quickly as we can.
Okay, yeah. All right.
Most of us are pretty adept at going through the board gamut and finding what we're looking for. Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Item 13.1 is the information item, August 2019 monthly suspension report. Item 14.1 is an action item, personnel certificated personnel action items. Is there a motion?
So move.
Dr. Rao, Dr. Freeman. Any discussion? None? Please vote. Item 14.1 is a 5-0 vote. Item 14.2 is another action item, personnel, classified personnel action items. Is there a motion?
Second.
Mr. Stafford, Mr. Nielsen. Any discussion? None? Please vote. Item 14.2 is a 5-0 vote. Item 14.3 is an action item, personnel, rescind phase 3 of the implementation plan to increase classified substitute pay. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Nielsen and Dr. Freeman. Any discussion?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to talk a minute about it. This, we'll call it an agreement, was done in 2016 prior to the, well, not all of the board, but some of us. I believe that it should be held too. I mean, if we made the agreement back then, things will catch up. The amount of money is minimal, and if you want to keep your ability to get the highest quality personnel, as we've been quoted many times on many other jobs, then we have to come out with decent contracts. Or this isn't a contract, I understand, this is an agreement, but I believe the district should honor this particular item. That's it.
Any other discussion?
It is my understanding that the savings that we are looking at, we can talk about that, right? The economic impact is $49,000, right? So if we're talking about 10% of the compensation that we have right now is $1.50. Would that be accurate to say that? Per hour, yeah, hourly, yeah. So if we divide 49,000 divided by 1.5, we have 32,666 hours that we are going to have of subs. If we divide that by 8 hours during the day, that would be how much? 4,000 days that we are talking about, 4,000 subs. Does that make sense what I'm saying? 400? Because it's 8 hours. 8 hours, 4,000 days times 8 would be 32,000, right? Yeah, because that would be 4,000 days. No? Because if it's 4,000 days, if every day is 1 hour, it's 4,000 hours. We're talking about the equivalent of Does that make sense? Well, let me refer, I'm sorry. 8 hours, I was thinking. Yeah.
Sometimes substitutes are only there for four
They be, well, if it's 4 hours, it's going to be more days. Well, let me rephrase it, rephrase my comment. $49,000, about how many average substitutes are we talking about? How many subs by day we can? My point is that is minimum, and it's a little bit of money that everybody is going to get, every sub a day, if we keep it how it is instead of resigning it. And this brings to my mind when we had some classified staff members from the kitchen, is that correct, kitchen department? Yeah. Nutrition services. Yeah, I don't want to offend. Hey, nutrition services. When we were talking about $900 a month, right? That maybe for some of you, right, is almost nothing. For some of us, it's going to be a little bit more, right, depending on our salaries. But for those employees, it's a lot. It's a lot of money. That's how they make their living. So that's why I was thinking, I don't know how many employees can be affected for $49,000, right? If we talk about, and I want to say, right, increase, let's say, just cabinet members and board members, including us, right? If we have the same increase of 2% or 3%, probably it would be more than $49,000. Yeah, probably. I don't know. Maybe a lot less, right? But my point is that is not a lot of money for people who is trying to make their ends meet. That eventually they are going to be full-time members of our district. For them, it makes a big difference, right? And for the district overall, from the whole budget, what percent of the budget, or if we need to reduce expenses, what percent is that? Maybe we can look into some other things to make up for those $49,000. That's my
This
opinion.
one was about a 10% raise.
Yeah, it was actually 15% each year. So let me walk you back through this a little bit. For those of us that weren't here, myself included, in 2016, when the board took this action. Back in November of 2016, the board took action to do a three-phase increase to substitute salaries with the intent, as Mr. Stafford had mentioned, there were two reasons behind that. Number one was to try and attract, recruit, and retain quality classified substitute employees. That was the first thing. And not having been here, that makes me think, gosh, we must have had an issue as it relates to classified subs at the time. And the second reason is to prepare for California's minimum wage increase to $15, so that way we can be prepared for that and the incremental increases that go along with that. As part of this, in phase one, it was to put the classified subs 20% less than what the salary step was. The first step was for the classified employees. Phase two was a narrower scope of the classified substitutes that would be affected, and that was to put them 10% below where the first step was for classified employees. And then phase three was to specifically address campus supervisors and custodians and have them, along with the other ones, be at the first step of the classified salary schedule when they serve as substitutes. Coupled with these three levels of increases, the board also at that time approved to provide salary increases to the classified subs that were the same as the salary increases that classified employees were getting. So in addition to these increases, they were being compared to a percentage of the salary schedule for classified employees. So as the classified salary schedule went up, the classified substitute hourly rate also went up. And so when we looked at it this year, and the reason that we've made the recommendation to hold off on this third phase is because between both the salary increases that went to the classified salary schedule and the increases that went to phase one and phase two, it met the goal, the intention behind the original goal, and that was it's helped to recruit and retain quality classified substitutes, where we have between 95, 98 fill rate on those classified sub positions. And all of those substitute positions are above the $15 range right now. So in no way, the one caveat and the one difference between this and the issue that we had a while back as it relates to our nutrition services employees was that in the case of the nutrition services employees, although the point I think in sharing that was that the cost wasn't that significant, but the difference is that in that case we were talking about taking something away from employees, like talking about laying off potential employees, where in this case we're just simply talking about not increasing their salaries above what it currently is right now. Of course, the board at the time, and I think that this is Mr. Safford's point, is the board 3 years ago made a commitment to say, well, this is how we're going to phase these in for these purposes. And the only reason we're saying maybe let's not do that at this time is because the intent behind that three-phase process has already been met. And it's an opportunity of saving.
I also would like to throw in the fact that when you compare hourly rates for substitutes in these areas with surrounding districts that we would be sharing our pool of substitutes with, most likely, we are 30% higher in pay per hour than ish, not every single time, but around 30% higher than a lot of these other districts. We're paying quite a few dollars more per hour quite often, which in my mind makes it think that we are still in a position to be able to get quality substitutes because we're still paying more than the other surrounding districts as well. So and it's not like we're taking money away from it. We're just like kind of putting a freeze on the pay right now, and so they wouldn't be making any less money. We wouldn't be bumping that up.
And I've heard the word freeze brought up, and that would seem to indicate to me that we would hold off on doing it at this point. It doesn't mean we wouldn't reinstitute it at a later date. So it's not, I don't believe that it's reneging on an agreement so much as making some adjustments to it for the time being. To me, we have $49,000 here, $49,000 there. It adds up to what we need. And while it would seem not to be a lot, I don't see it as being harmful. Just strictly right now we're just freezing it. We're holding off on it. We can always add it in next year if we wanted, back in next year if we chose to do so.
If I can make one other, I'm sorry. If I can make one other comment as it relates to the money too, just so because Dr. Ray, I think you were alluding to this, that the $49,000 was what was decided and determined in 2016. But we have that's a guess, right? We have no way of knowing how many substitutes we're going to actually need any given year. And some years we need fewer, and some years we need more. And so it really is just our best guess estimate that took place back in 2016. So I think in terms of analyzing the exact number of hours we need, I think it's just purely speculative. So yeah.
Okay. Just one question, also, Mr. Skorpanish. That agreement was approved by the board, right? That was an agreement is a promise. Can we define that? This is what we are going to do. This is what we agreed to do. And now, because we have the power to say, oh, forget about it, we are not doing it. Yeah. So would that be considered an agreement? Could that be reasonable to say that an agreement is something I'm promising, I agree that I'm going to be doing this?
I think it would be fair to say that the board at that time agreed to increase the salaries over that three-phase period. Yeah. It wasn't, for clarity, and I think you know this in what you're looking to, there wasn't a group that they agreed to, but in general, there was agreement based on the vote of the board to increase the salaries over that those three times.
Yeah. Okay. Is the fact that we consider now we are 30% higher than the other districts. That is true, right? That is a valid point. Besides that valid point, what would be the main reason to freeze it?
To freeze it. Oh, and that's a fair question. So the recommendation is looking back at the intent and the intentional and the purpose of the original three-phase process. And as I mentioned, the intent behind that is to try and attract and retain higher quality people that are here, and then increase the salaries in preparation of the mandatory minimum wage increases that are supposed to happen. Those two items. And that's why we're saying this would be a time to freeze because we've met both of those. We've met the intent behind what this was supposed to do. By no means would staff ever recommend anything if we were saying, we're going to do this, but we're still struggling to get quality classified substitutes, and we still have this legal requirement that's looming in front of us. But we've done both. We've addressed both of those things. We're not worried so much because we've for a number of reasons. Number one, we're paying more now, so it's attracting and retaining higher quality people. We've also changed the internal processes in terms of recruiting individuals for those positions. And then secondly, because of those increases, because the increases of these phases, along with the increases that went with our classified salary schedule, it's got us above that $15 range, which we need to anticipate in a couple of years. So the intent behind the original process was to do those, and we've met those.
So, gentlemen, out of curiosity, would it be fair, since we have so many questions, and I think, to be honest with you, we're spending a lot of time on this one topic, maybe we should table it, because, only reason being, is it was supposed to be in effect since July 1st of 2018, which it has not according to this. It's frozen at this point anyway. So would it be fair, since we have so many questions, we can talk about it in closed session next month and table it? Is that appropriate?
No, it should not be a closed session item. It should be an open session.
So an open, pardon me?
Which means we can still continue to talk about that currently if we wanted to. It depends on how much time
Well,
people want
it's
to
up to
spend.
you, gentlemen.
So I didn't know that. So it's already in effect?
Yeah, it's already, we haven't implemented it yet, so it's not taking anything back at all. That's why we haven't done that yet. And to that proposal, if the board would prefer staff to provide additional information in terms of helping make your decision, be happy to do that.
I also have one more thing to add before we table it if we do, but Mr. Stafford had talked about a lot of these substitutes become our permanent employees, but if we put this freeze into effect, then they would permanently, right, well, semi-permanently for now, but what it does is if a substitute employee becomes a full-time employee, it becomes a pay increase because they would jump to the beginning column on the scale as well. So it would be an incentive for them to become a permanent employee because they would be making more money. They wouldn't be making the same amount of money as a substitute in the same position. So.
My point of view comes from actually being shouldering the brunt of when you don't get substitutes. When a substitute, I would go, 3 employees have called out for the day. I only have 8 or 9. 3 have called out. Means 15 hours a day for me. That's history. That's a fact. And the impact that has over a period of time, and you must reassign work to other individuals, the quality and the safety of the school go down. It takes an accumulative effect, but it does happen. I can guarantee you, I lived it. And that plant supervisor job, which was double the duties, almost killed me. So I know what I'm saying here. It seems like a big raise, but you promised somebody something. And if now I didn't recognize the year, but it seems like we're in the wrong for quite a while here that we haven't upheld our commitment from July 1st, 2018. So are we covering something here, or is everything on the table?
Yeah, I was questioning, is that a typo? Should it say 2019, or is that for a full year we haven't implemented this?
Yeah, it wasn't implemented going back to 2018.
So there's people out there we owe money to that don't even know that, and we most likely didn't know it either. So
Yeah,
I'm not blaming anyone. So.
Well, I'm sorry, Dr. Freeman has something, but I would like to see the numbers in terms of our sub-rate fulfillment back before this was in place and what it is currently, like you said, 95 to 98%. I would like to see what it was back then because you lived through that.
I lived.
Yeah. If we were sitting at 75% or something like that, I could see that we've already gotten to where like you said, the intent of this agreement was, the heart of it was, I can see that we fulfilled that. But if we're looking to get 100%, we're still not there. I mean, I don't know if we'll ever get there, but
I'm okay with tabling it myself, but Dr. Freeman did have something he wanted to say.
Thank you. I guess on tabling it, I'd get one of these, because, okay, that way then. Because if we table it, we're gonna get more information, but we're also gonna have to go back over what we've covered already, so that the time spent on the next time would be greater than if we do it tonight. I'm not sure that it's gonna change anybody's particular mind, I don't know. You know, I've always felt like, let's rip the Band-Aid off and get it over with rather than take time, but if this is something that the board wants to do, I'll go along with it. Well, I understand. I just don't think it's gonna change anything. That's just my feeling from the way people are discussing things.
Just wondering if we are looking to board approval to resign phase 3, and we did it, rescind it. Rescind phase 3. Yeah. And if we already did it in July 1st of 2018. Yeah. What is the? I'm just wondering why we stop it without the board approval, and now we are looking for board approval. Maybe it was not needed, and now it is needed, or just trying to understand the process.
Oh, no, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. I think this was a staff oversight in terms of not increasing the salary schedules back in 2018, not knowing that this was maybe in place at the time. And so when we were looking at reconciling some of our salary schedules and doing some work with RCOE on that, this came up. And that's when it came to my attention, and that's when I said, well, that's something we absolutely need to bring to the board's attention.
And let's fix it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Table item 14.3 until next month, but we also want to discuss any information more that you have to present. We're asking for any and all information.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, everyone. Moving on to 14.4 is an action item, personnel adoption resolution number 4/19/20, week of school administrator. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Mr. Nelson, Dr. Rao. I can hear my voice. Any discussion? Please vote. Oh, look at that, the thing's up there to vote. Item 14.4 is a 5-0 vote. Okay. Item 14.5 is an action item. Adoption resolution number 3/19/20, public hearing resolution for the pupil textbook and instructional materials. Compliance regarding sufficiency of instructional materials for fiscal year 2019-2020. And, what was it first? Pardon me.
Second.
I'm sorry, Mr. Nielsen? And Dr. Rao?
Yes.
And 8:01 is now open for public hearing. Any takers? No? No. Okay. Time is 8:02. We are now closing the public hearing. That wasn't masculine enough. There we go. All right. Any discussion, gentlemen? Please vote. Don't look at her when you're voting.
Item 14.5 is a 5-0 vote. Giving her a thumbs up. Okay, item 14.6 is another action item, curriculum agreement for professional consultant services with Leading Edge Learning Center to provide parents in the Paris Union High School District with workshops to improve communications between child, parent, and teacher, funded through local control accountability plan supplemental and concentration funds at a total cost, not to exceed 20,000, not the general fund. Is there a motion? Dr. Freeman and Mr. Nelson. Any discussion? None? Please vote. Item 14.6 is a 5-0 vote. Item 14.7 is an action item, building and grounds, award of contracts in 16 categories for the California Military Institute Gym and Parking Circulation Project bid number 082819 to the lowest responsive and responsible bidders funded through the various facilities funds in the amount of 13,000, rewind.
That decimal point.
Yeah. See, I'm trying to go fast so we can get out in a timely manner. 13,730,000. Is that right? And 706. Good Lord, that's a lot of money. Not the general fund. Is there a motion? Thank you, sir. Mr. Nelson, Dr. Freeman. Any discussion? None. Please vote. He just blew me away, man. Item 14.7 is a 5-0 vote. Item 15.1, general functions, equity.
That was the packet that I given every board to take a look at. That was something that was requested, is what our current policy is.
This is all board policies on it, and dealing with equity, correct?
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Continuing on. Item 15.2, business revolving cash report. Item 15.3, board policies. Do you guys want me to read through it?
Yeah, read them.
Click on each one.
Item 15.4, board policies, community relations, series 1000. Item 15.5 is the information item, board policies, business and non-instructional operations. Item 15.6, board policies, personnel, series 4000. Item 15.7, information item, board policies, board bylaws, series 9000. And item 16.1, closed session if necessary.
Not necessary.
Thank you. Oops. Items 18.1, other items by the superintendent.
None this evening, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Items 19.1, other items by the Board of Trustees. Dr. Rao, Ms. Nelson, Mr. Freeman, Mr. Stafford, myself, no. Item 20.1, adjournment of the regular board meeting of trustees for September 18, 2019. Is there a motion?
So move.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't get that. Mr. Nelson?
It wasn't me.
Oh, Dr. Rao? Dr. Rao and Freeman?
That was Mr.
Any discussion?
No,
No?
it's good.
Please vote. Shh. Please vote, gentlemen. Item 20.1 is a 5-0 vote. We are now adjourning at 8:06 p.m. Ms. Rico, wait a second. I do have the receipt for using the card the other day.